Hey guys, welcome back to iCode. In our mock interview experience series, this is the second video for the technical round. Before this, we had an exploration round. If you haven't watched it, I'll mention its link in the description. Please have a look. Now let's jump on to our second round, which is going to be a very iOS specific technical round.
Hi Pallav, how are you doing?
Hi Tanya, I'm good. How are you?
I'm also good, Pallav. Thanks for asking. So let me give you a very quick walkthrough of how this round is going to be. So in our last discussion, we talked about your experience, projects you have worked on,
Yep,
challenges you have faced.
right.
So this one is going to be technical and we'll talk only about iOS development.
Sure.
So in next 30-45 minutes, we'll try to touch some of the important concepts for iOS development, starting from the basics to complex concepts, and we'll cover both UI building and functionality implementation.
Sure.
I may ask you to fix some broken piece of code as well. So I hope that's fine with you.
Yeah, totally. All set.
Yeah. So let's get started with your interview.
Sure.
Can you explain the iOS application states and when each state occurs during an app's life cycle?
Sure. So there are 5 states of the app. The first one, that is not running. This is the state where the app is not launched or has been terminated. Then comes the inactive, that is the app is running in foreground but it is not receiving the events. The active state where app is running in the foreground and receiving events as well. The background state where app is running but it is not in the foreground, for example playing music or downloading something. And then the suspended state where the app is in the background but not executing the code. So these are the 5 states.
Okay. Can you tell me the state when phone call comes when user is using any app?
Yeah, it would be inactive state because the app was being used by the user, so it was in foreground. But as soon as the call came, it stopped receiving the events, so it moved to the inactive state.
Is it possible that OS can automatically kill the app when it is in background?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, OS can terminate the app running in background, and this is generally done to free up the system resources.
So what is the state of the app when OS terminates it?
Uh, App is in suspended state when it is terminated with the intention of freeing up the resources.
Can you tell me more about suspended state?
Sure. So in the suspended state, the app is in the background, but it is not actively executing the code. I mean, it has been frozen by the system to free up the system resources for the other tasks. While in this state, the app state and the data are preserved in the memory, but the app is not consuming the CPU cycles or using other system resources. So if the system needs more resources, or if the app has been in the suspended state for an extended period, without being brought to the foreground, the OS may decide to terminate the app. When this happens, the app is removed from the memory and its state is lost.
Okay, got it. So assume that you are developing an app where users can read novels.
Mhm.
Consider that user was on page 167, then he or she got involved in something
Sure.
and app went in background. After a couple of hours, when user brings the app back to the foreground, he or she should land on the same page, same novel. How can you ensure this?
Sure. So this is actually related to the preserving of the state before it gets killed. Now, when app enters the background, we should save the relevant information, including the user's current page in the novel. Using it can be done using the techniques like saving to a file or storing database or defaults for that matter. Now, since there is a possibility that the app might get terminated when it is in the suspended state, so we should ensure that the information is saved even when the app is killed. So for doing this, we can listen to the notifications like application did move to background, and there we can execute the code. And when the user brings the app back to the foreground, we can check that if we are having the preserved state data. If it exists, we can use that to restore it and move the users to the position, the 167 page as you mentioned. So I mean, that is one of the ways through which we can do this.
Yeah, this would work, I think. But are you aware of any other way of achieving this? Something which Apple provides out of the box?
Yeah, I have heard of state preservation and restoration that Apple provides, but I haven't used it. I mean, I read articles about it, and I'm aware that there are a couple of delegate methods in app delegate. I'm not sure about the name, but it involves some protocol. I think UI state restoring or something like that. Through that, it can be done.
Yeah, you are right about the protocol. It's totally fine if you haven't implemented it. Not every application needs state preservation. In fact, some of the apps it shouldn't be done, like banking apps.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
So let's talk about delegations. How delegation works in iOS, its alternatives, and when would you prefer one over the another?
Sure. So, delegation is actually a design pattern which is commonly used in iOS for establishing communication and the data passing between the objects. Now, in this pattern, one object, which is the delegate, it trusts on other object, which is delegator, with the certain responsibilities or tasks. The delegator calls the methods on delegate to inform about the events and to request the data. And for its implementation, we use protocols. So the delegate adopts the protocol conforming to the required methods, while the delegator holds a reference to the delegate. And for the alternatives of this delegate approach, we can use notifications or closures and even combined framework for that matter. Sorry, I missed the last part of your question. What was it?
How do you decide which one should be used?
Yeah, right. So the delegation is used when you need to establish a one-to-one relationship between the objects, especially if the delegate needs to have more control over the delegator's behavior. Uh, it's also beneficial when you need to ensure that type safety and the clear documentation between the objects. While notification is more of a publisher-subscriber mechanism, where an object broadcasts the notifications to other objects without needing to know that who will receive them. So it's a good choice for broadcasting events to multiple listeners. However, this can be less type safe and harder to debug at times, I mean, because of its implicit nature. For Combine, it provides a declarative Swift API for processing the values over the time. It is used for handling asynchronous and event-driven code in a reactive manner, I would say. So when dealing with complex asynchronous data flows and event handling, the Combine framework is a powerful choice. I mean, this is how we can decide.
How much comfortable are you with Combine?
Yeah, I have been using Combine for almost an year now, so yeah, quite comfortable.
So, what all publisher have you used in Combine, and did you find any challenge with any one of them?
Yeah, I have used quite some publishers. To name some, they're Just, Future, Data Task Publisher from URL Session, Pass-Through Subject, and the operators like Map and Filters, because even they are publishers internally. And in terms of challenges, I did face some. So once I tried replacing the dispatch group with the zip publisher and struggled with it. Later, I realized that zip doesn't pass the data to downstream if any of the publishers fail, which is not the case with dispatch group. I mean, its notify function is always called regardless of a success or failure. So that was a challenge.
Yeah, that happens with Zip. Anything else that you have faced while learning Combine?
Yeah, another problem I faced, it was with pass-through subject. So I thought that when I'll be having the data, I'll pass it as data, and when I won't have it, I'll send the error. So I wanted to do this repeatedly because the flow involved data validation. But then I realized that once we pass the error, we cannot use the publisher anymore. So there I invested some time, and initially it felt like a challenge.
You mentioned about pass-through subject twice, once with publisher and once as a challenge. Is pass-through subject really a publisher?
Uh, Pass-through subject is not actually a publisher, but it is used to create the custom publishers. So a pass-through subject is basically a type that conforms to both subject and the publisher protocols. And we can use it to manually send some values to the downstream subscribers and handle errors on completion events. So it allows us to create our own custom publishers that can emit values, errors, and completion events.
You said that it conforms to both subject and publisher protocols, but if we look at the declaration of pass-through subject, it says that it only conforms to subject.
Yeah, that is because the subject inherits from the publisher protocol.
So, does publisher also inherits from some protocol or class?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, but as far as I remember, it doesn't.
Can you write the publisher protocol?
Sure. So it would be something like protocol publisher, which will take uh, which will return, I think, an output and a failure. Uh, then it will have a method receive, which will take a generic parameter, generic uh, subscriber which can be of type s, that we have received as a generic parameter. Yeah, this is how it would be.
Do you want to go through it again? I mean, do you think receive method would look like this?
uh, yeah, as far as I remember, it takes only one parameter, that is subscriber. So yeah.
So that means any entity can be a subscriber and that can be passed to receive method.
Yeah, any entity can be used as a subscriber.
No, what I mean is, are there any constraints for the entity to be a subscriber? Or can I directly pass some view models instance and it will start receiving the events?
uh, yeah, oh yeah, my bad. It should conform to the subscriber protocol.
So there should be some constraint for the parameter, right?
Yeah, that we can do by adding a where clause. Let me modify, just a minute.
Sure.
Where s will be subscriber. Yeah.
And what about output and failure? What are those?
Um, those are the associated types for defining that what type of output is expected and what type of failure is expected. My bad, I missed on mentioning them as associated types. Associated type, this will be of type output, and associated type, this will be a failure, which should be an error. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, actually, there are a couple of more other modifications, but yeah, more or less this looks good. So let's move on and discuss about struct.
Yeah.
I find structs really interesting. Why do you think that Swift uses struct for inbuilt types?
Yeah, I think that one of the main reasons would be the nature of structs, that they are value type. This means that they are copied when assigned to a new variable, or passed as an function argument. Now, this ensures that the data remains unchanged when shared among different parts of the code. And for the fundamental data types like integer, double, or boolean, or any type for that matter, this value semantics simplifies the code and reduces the risk of unexpected behavior. And on top of that, structs also add to the performance, so probably that would be the reason.
And how do they add to the performance?
So since structs are stack allocated and involve less overhead compared to the heap allocated classes, they are often more efficient for small lightweight data types.
So, what is the overhead in heap allocation or using classes for that matter?
Definitely, classes add certain overheads. The first and foremost would be the memory one. So the heap allocated class instances have an additional memory overhead due to the reference counting and class metadata pointers. This is not the case with structs. Then there's reference counting, because classes rely on reference counting for the memory management. So this involves tracking of how many references are pointing to an instance, and that can introduce the runtime overhead.
Yeah.
Further, classes are mutable by nature, so it requires a careful management to ensure the thread safety, and that will introduce complexity and potential performance impacts. Uh, on top of that, garbage collection is one of the considerations. So, the managing the heap allocated classes will definitely introduce an overhead of garbage collection cycles, which can potentially impact the real-time performance.
So, if there are so many downsides with classes, why do we use them?
So structs are by default the choice, and that is what Apple also recommends. But it is not like classes shouldn't be used anywhere. So wherever we need subclassing or inheritance is involved, of course, classes are needed. UI view controller is one of the classic examples. Next, wherever we need the Objective-C interoperability, classes are needed because structs cannot interact with the components written in Objective-C. And one of the practical use cases that I see is wherever we need to maintain the state. when we want that action at one point should reflect the changes at other places. Essentially, the reference holding is needed. So that is where classes are required.
Since classes are reference based, it gives you the provision of maintaining the states, but at the same time, they can lead to data inconsistency.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think?
No, totally. So data inconsistency is indeed one of the challenges with the class-based types. And this is because the same instance can be accessed by multiple entities at the same time. Now, as far as multiple reads are happening concurrently, probably it is fine. But in case if multiple writes are happening concurrently, it will lead to the data inconsistency, and those are hard to debug and even crashes at times.
Totally. So how can you handle this?
Yeah. So for handling this, we need to make sure that multiple read-write operations are being prevented, the concurrent ones. And one of the easy ways would be to use the actors. Uh, and that is because actors provide us this entire concurrency handling issues out of the box. But in case if we do not have the liberty to use the actors because of the minimum target supported version or any other limitation, then we'll have to build the solution of our own by using the queues and the logs and those kind of things.
You mentioned actors. Do actors support inheritance?
My bad. Actors do not support inheritance. I just proposed that solution because I thought that we are considering the reference-based types, which actors are. But if we are considering the inheritance as well, then of course classes are the only type, and then we'll have to build that solution.
Yeah, that's right. So, Pallav, let me share you one code snippet, and would you please tell me what is the issue with data inconsistency here?
Sure. Let me have a look. Class product init date price. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think the issue is with the update price method here. So if two callers for that method try to update the price at the same time by calling this method, then it will lead to the data inconsistency since it's a class.
Okay. And how can we fix this?
We can handle this by adding a serial queue.
Can you make those changes?
Yeah, sure. Uh, yeah, I think this would work.
Can you please explain the changes you have made?
Sure. So the price property, I changed it to private to encapsulate it, and also added a price access queue, which is a serial dispatch queue because queues are serial by default. Then I added a get price function to safely retrieve the product's price synchronously. This also ensures that only one thread accesses the price at a time. The update price function that updates the price asynchronously within the price access queue, that also makes it thread safe. So this ensures that the concurrent writes do not lead to the data inconsistencies.
Okay. So what will happen if first two threads try to update the price at the same time, and second two threads try to read the price at the same time?
Right. So first, considering the scenario where two threads are trying to update the price at the same time. So in this, when two threads attempt to update the price of the product simultaneously, the serial dispatch queue will ensure that only one of the thread is allowed to modify the price property at that time. The first thread accesses the update price, and it will acquire a lock on the price access queue. It updates the price and then releases the lock. the second thread attempting to access at the same time simultaneously, it will be blocked until the lock is released by the first thread. So as a result, the concurrent updates will be serialized and only one of the thread's price updates will be applied. So this prevents the data inconsistencies, and it ensures that the price is updated by one thread at a time. Now when two threads try to read the price at the same time, so the get price method, the basically the price access queue is also used to synchronize the access to the price property. The same way with the write, the first thread will call the get price and will acquire the lock on the price access queue. It will read the price and then release the lock. The second thread will be blocked until the lock is not released by the first one reading the price. This serialization again ensures that the concurrent reads are not happening at the same time for the inconsistencies, and both the threads receive the correct value. They won't interfere with each other. So in both the cases, this dispatch queue, it guarantees that access to the price property is synchronized and serialized, which is preventing the data inconsistency here.
Okay. So you said that second thread will be blocked until the lock is released by the first thread.
Right.
What does it mean? It will keep waiting, or will it be returned without any value or previous value? Exactly what will happen?
Right. So I meant that the second thread will be temporarily halted and prevented from executing further until it can acquire the lock. So when the first thread enters a synchronized block, it acquires the lock on the serial dispatch queue, which is our price access queue in this case, and it executes the code inside that block. In the case of a read operation, the first thread reads the price and then releases the lock. While the first thread is in the synchronized block, the second thread also attempts to enter the same synchronized block. And in the case of concurrent access to the get price method I'm referring to. So, however, the second thread cannot immediately enter the synchronized block because the lock is already held by the first thread. Instead, the second thread is blocked or put into a waiting state, a temporary halted state. It will not proceed further until the lock is released by the first thread. So the second thread does not return a value or a previous value. It waits for the lock to be released, and once the lock is available, it proceeds to read the current value of the period of the price, and then it returns.
Okay. And why are we reading the value in a sync block but writing in async?
Right. So the decision to read the value within a sync block while writing it in an async block is based on a trade-off between different requirements. So reading the value within a sync block ensures that the value is read atomically, meaning that no other thread can access or modify it concurrently while the read operation is in progress. This way we also get a guarantee that the value returned by the get price method is the most up-to-date value at the moment of the read, which is essential when we want to ensure the data consistency in a multi-threaded environment. Now writing the value within an async block means that the write operation is performed in the background, possibly on a different thread. So this allows the calling thread to continue its execution without waiting for the write to complete. So using an asynchronous operation for write can help in improving the responsiveness of the calling thread and prevent it from becoming blocked while the write operation may take some time. Let's say if it depends on a network request or something similar to that. So the combination of synchronous read and asynchronous writes ensures that the concurrent reads do not interfere with the writes and vice versa.
Okay, yeah, got it. So what are the other ways through which you could have handled this?
We could have used dispatch semaphores or operation queues for handling this. And even synchronized blocks would have worked, but since they internally use Objective-C, which adds to the performance overhead, so that's not the good choice. But yeah, we can use dispatch semaphores and locks.
Can you show how will you do it with dispatch semaphores?
Sure. Yeah, this should work.
Okay. So you have used differ here. Can you tell how it internally works?
I'm not sure, but from what I have seen, maybe it internally maintains a stack. This is because when we write multiple defer blocks, the last one is executed the first in the LIFO manner. So when the control is about to move out of the current scope, the execution blocks that are added to that stack would be probably popped. So I think that it's stacked, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that would be the idea. Cool. Let's move on and discuss about the UI.
Sure.
Can you tell me the life cycle of a view?
Sure. So first the view is initialized with init with coder or init with frame, whatever is applicable, that gets called. Then for laying out the subviews and applying the constraints, the layout subview method is called. Then the system calls draw or draw rect if we have overridden it. Then we'll move to window or did move to window when the view is added to the super view. And then the view update methods like set needs layout, set needs display, those are called. That's the cycle.
Yeah. And when is awake from lib called?
It is called right after the initialization. My bad, I missed it because I was only considering the programmatic view creation flow. In that one, the awake from nib is not called, but I mean, it is only called when we initialize the view from nib or the storyboard.
So you mentioned about two methods, set needs layout and set needs display. What is the difference between two?
So both of these methods serve for different purpose. Set needs layout, it indicates that the view's layout is invalid and needs to be updated. So this method marks the view as basically a dirty view, and it triggers the layout updates on the view, which means that the view's layout subviews method will be called in the next run loop cycle. We typically use set needs layout when we need to adjust the position or the size of the subviews, update constraints, or perform any layout related changes. While the set needs display method, it is called when the content needs to be redrawn or it needs to be updated. So this method marks the view as needing display, and it triggers the view's draw method or draw rect if it has been overridden to be called on the next run loop cycle. And this is typically used when we want to update the visual content of the view, such as drawing of graphics or images within the view, like that.
Can you explain the event handling mechanism in UIKit?
Event handling mechanism as in, sorry, I didn't get you.
Yeah, particularly the flow of a touch event from hardware to the point where it triggers an action in a UI control.
Got it. Sure. So the process starts with a hardware event triggered by a user's interaction, such as, say, tapping the screen. This hardware event is then delivered to the topmost view in the hierarchy, which is typically a UI window. Then the UI window performs the hit testing for identifying the view which intersects with the touch point. And then after this, UIKit establishes a UI responder chain, and the view that responded to the hit test becomes the initial first responder. Within the responder chain, the initial first responder is expected to handle the event, and in case if it doesn't, it is passed on to the next responder in the chain by calling the method next responder. And this is where the gesture recognizer also comes into the play, since they are capable of recognizing the gestures like tap, swipe, pinches, and analyzing the sequence of the events. So on recognizing a gesture, they trigger an associated action, essentially a selector. And this is where we implement the custom logic in response to the gesture recognizer, basically the code that we write.
Okay. So let me give you one scenario, like you have two views on top of each other, and you want the touch to be handled by the view lower in the hierarchy. Essentially, you want to pass the touch to a view which is below the view receiving the touch. How can you do this?
Got it. So, I mean, for this, we'll have to intervene in the process of the hit testing. As I mentioned earlier, that hit testing decides that which view should respond. So for achieving this, we can override the method responsible for the hit testing. I think its point coincides with or point incides with, something like this. And from there, if we return false, the touch would be passed on to the view below in the hierarchy. So that way we can achieve it.
Yeah, this will do. So let's just have last question from SwiftUI. Are you comfortable with SwiftUI?
Yeah, I mean, although I haven't worked that much with the SwiftUI, but I would like to attempt.
Okay. So can you tell me the difference between state property and binding properties?
Sure. Both state and binding property are, I mean, both are the property wrappers in SwiftUI, and state is used for maintaining the state within the same view. So maybe I can explain you with an example. Say you have a toggle. Now for maintaining the state of this toggle, you would use a state property, which will give you a kind of two-way data binding. But in contrast to this, the binding property wrapper is used when you need to pass some data to other view, but we expect that the changes from that view should be reflected back to the view who passed it, a kind of parent-child relation sort of thing. So in such scenarios, you pass a binding variable to the child, and the changes then are reflected back to the parent.
Okay. So it means I cannot pass the state properties to child views?
No, you can pass a state property, but then you won't get the two-way binding, because when state properties are passed, they are passed as a copy, and the changes made by the child won't be passed back to the parent.
Yeah, that's correct. So Pallav, I think we have discussed quite a bit. That's it from my side. It was really good discussion.
Definitely, Tanya. I mean, indeed, it was a great discussion. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
So that was about the second round in our interview experience series. The next round will be focusing on the system design, and if you think that this went well, hopefully that will get scheduled very soon. Please stay tuned for it. And if you like our videos, if you like the content that we create, you can consider subscribing to our channel. See you in the next round. Till then, happy coding.